no way for the applicant to meet that required slope, just given the existing conditions that they're rebuilding what's there. So we're in favor of that waiver. And then finally, the waiver for the sidewalks, we're also in favor of that, given that there's no sidewalks out there to connect to. So just jumping down in our memo to the comments on the proposed plans, really the only one that actually there's two I'll talk about specifically. The first is about the curbing. As you heard the applicant mention, their request originally was to use bituminous curb, which we are not in favor of. It's just not that durable. They have now proposed to use a sloped granite curbing, and I just want to confirm with our DPW that that's acceptable. And I will, in our comments back, I'll let everybody know what the outcome of that conversation is. And then finally, the biggest issue here is just that the connection being made into the drainage system in Arlington. So it's my recommendation that before the board makes a final determination on this subdivision, that we should get a letter from the town engineer in Arlington agreeing to make that connection, because that's really, this whole design is predicated on being able to make that connection. So I think before you close the hearing, we should have that letter from the town of Arlington. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you, Beth. Is there anyone else from any of the other departments in town on this call? Board of Health, DPW, anyone else? Public Works?
I believe
we have design review on here, but I'm not sure if they've reviewed it yet.
Correct. I thought I saw a design review member.
Julian's on here, but it might not be for this.
Julie Riemenschneider is on, but
you want to unmute her so she can, if she's on for this or she's on for another purpose.
I'm actually not seeing her anymore.
There she is. Thanks. Hi, Julie.
Hi. I have not reviewed it. We're looking at it at our meeting tomorrow night.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Julie.
Can I jump in there, Heather, and just say, I hope they look at the walls. That's one of the issues.
Maureen, you're next. We have to give Brian his turn, and then you're up next. The discussion of the board is in a few. Did you?
No, I just want to make sure when she, just as a follow-up for Julie, that she gets that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see what you're saying. Go ahead. You're talking to Julie. Go ahead.
I was, yes. No, just that I think from a design perspective, we'll be interested in the a way. There are several walls, actually more than one, and so all of those will need to be examined. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Didn't realize I thought you were talking to the applicant.
No.
Okay. And Brian, do you want to give your comments about with your memo and your?
Yeah, I did not have a lot here. So this had to mostly do with after consulting with legal counsel, the question really from the beginning was whether or not this should have been just a road improvement plan. And the cleanest way we, after talking with engineering and legal counsel, was just to do a definitive subdivision. So this was more of getting the engineering right rather than it was what you would consider a typical subdivision. So I think the only thing kind of worth talking about, the same thing that where Beth brought up in terms of sidewalks, as in there's, within thousands of feet, there are not any sidewalks that this would connect to, this 250 or 270 foot stretch of road. There's no sidewalks around. The slope, again, this is a reasonable slope for what's actually there. It would be impossible to make that grade any real better than it is. And the rest of it is, again, I think everyone's here is saying the same thing, is that the coordination with Arlington is, paramount, and that I'll reiterate again what Beth said, is not to completely close the hearing until we have confirmation from Arlington of what needs to get done that will actually get done through the board.
Thank you, Brian. So now we're going to it's now time to open up to public comment. So if you would like to speak, please either raise your hand, note in the chat to the host, which is called town manager, but it is actually Brian, the town planner. Or we're going to unmute, and please say if you'd like to speak, and we'll take down everyone who would like to speak. Each speaker will be given a maximum of 5 minutes with an extension of no more than 2 minutes at my discretion as the chair. If you represent 3 or more people, you may be given up to 15 minutes to speak as well, based on my discretion. So if everyone could please notify, we're going to create a list of everyone who would like to speak, and then we'll go down through that list. So at this time, we will, we have Joyce Wessner, her hand is raised. Brian, can you please unmute everyone? And we'll create a list and go from there.
So there's also been some people chatting. Miss DeLeo had been saying that she'd been wanting to speak if possible.
That's great. Yep.
So as of right now, I have Miss DeLeo, I see Ms. Wessner, and at the moment, those are the only ones that hands are raised. However, there are 2 people in the waiting room. One of them is a number that I don't really know what the protocol now is for letting people call in terms of numbers, but I will see how this goes, and we will ask them to identify themselves.
Okay.
Okay, so now there's no one in the waiting room anymore. So as of now, the people that have indicated that they would like to speak are Heidi DeLeo, Joyce Wessner, and if there's anybody else, I'm going to unmute everyone at the moment, and if anyone else would like to say, we'll get the list finalized.
Mute right there.
All right, has anyone that's on the line now other than Ms. DeLeo, Ms. Wessner, is there anyone else that would also like to be able to comment on the subdivision? Okay, it looks like then it's just the 2, and we're gonna start with Heidi, and I'm gonna unmute planning board members first.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Heidi, you are welcome to speak. We'll go for you, and then we'll go to Joyce Wessner. And you have up to 5 minutes to speak. Look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate all this, and I appreciate the efforts that have been put into thinking about how to improve Lock Street because it desperately needs it. So currently, a lot of the drainage that happens comes directly into my lot and has damaged a lot of my lot. So I'm kind of curious as to where the actual catch basins or sewers will go, and also the curbs and how they are planned and where they will go, and also where the driveway will come out of this proposed home.
Thank you, Heidi.
So we could either let the engineer, John Barrows, speak, or I would say if John wants to raise his hand, or if not, it would be Mike to respond to those answers. Heather, or did you want to get all of the questions?
We get all of them, make a list of it, and then it comes in at in 2 more areas. We'll bring in and ask those questions directly of the applicant.
Okay.
So it's although I am interested, let's go to Joyce, please.
Yep, Joyce, go for it, Joyce.
Okay, thank you very much. So August is here with me, and the 2 of us have watched Mike and his team build this house for the last many months, and it's very, very well built. And we're glad to have a beautiful house next door to us. The street is something we actually only want improved if it will make our down the hill neighbors happy, and I know it will. But in terms of what it will do to us, can you answer a couple of questions about along the lines of what Heidi raised? According to the diagram that's on the screen, our walls will disappear apparently. If the purple is the edge of if the purple line is the edge of the work that's going to be done. So the bottom half of our stone walls seem to be going to disappear. And I notice Heidi will have a little less of a front yard and driveway, or am I reading it wrong? And then the second question I have in that regard is, I heard that there will be trees put on the south side, and I wasn't sure, street trees, I wasn't sure what the south side of what would actually be, because we are on the south side of this proposed house, but does that mean it would be on the side of Mike's property? That's all I have.
This is Beth. I just want to jump in and say that that purple line is the right-of-way line. It's not the limit of work.
It's Maureen. Beth, can you explain to the people who are participating what that means, what right-of-way is?
Sure. So that's the line that denotes looking at the plan we have here on your side, Joyce, above that purple line is your property, and below that purple line is the roadway. So even though there's a very small paved area currently, the road is much wider. I'm not sure what the layout is there, but it might be 40 feet. I'm not sure from this plan.
Yeah, it's 40 feet.
Looks close.
Yeah. So it looks like your existing wall, just shown on this plan, is on your side of that property line.
Yeah, we're going to leave the walls as they are. We're matching up the driveways. We're going to. Sorry.
Excuse me, could you identify yourself, please?
I'm sorry. This is John Barrows, the engineer.
Thank you.
So it looks like maybe we've answered some of Joyce's questions. Other than the proposed driveway here, we were both were wondering of where that driveway is. That is right here. But in terms of Ms. DeLeo's questions about, well, it was centered around catch basins and then driveways. I don't know if you wanted to further explain that, Mr. Barrows.
Sure. So she was referencing Magenta line, which is the limit of the right-of-way, the change from from the roadway to the private property. The double black line is the actual curbing, and that would be the beginning of the new pavement. So the new pavement is about 20 feet wide. We'll create a gutter along the curbing, just like a traditional road, and along the front of the is what main stormwater catch basin, and the catch basin will be, a traditional catch basin, and we have added a curb inlets also to catch stormwater that runs down the gutter. Just about street trees. The street trees are going to be just on the side of the road where the lots are being subdivided in the grass strip between the traveled way or the pavement and the right-of-way, the magenta line.
Brian, if you could just zoom in a little bit on this, it might be helpful for folks to see a little bit better.
Sure.
Heidi, I think on your property, it looks like the new curb will basically be, for the most part, right at the edge of the existing pavement. In one area, there'll be a little bit expansion of the green space in front of your house. So you can see a comment with the arrows that says remove existing pavement. So On your side, there's actually, in Joyce as well, there's a little bit of the existing pavement that's being removed, and the roadway is being shifted towards the 36 Dunster lane side. So there shouldn't be really any change to what you see in terms of the width of the grass strip, Heidi, in front of your property.
That's correct, yeah.
Mhm.
Just the other thing I wanted to mention, so I'm not sure, and I'll let the applicant speak to this, if the proposed driveway for the new home is still going to be located on that side of the house, or if it's going to be flipped. But really, that's something that doesn't really get finalized till the building permit phase. It's not really something that's approved as part of the subdivision. So what's shown here, I'll let the applicant respond, but it's possible that it could change once they apply for a building permit.
Yeah.
So there's still, it looks like Heidi and Joyce still have some follow-up questions.
Maybe I can help. This is Mike DiMartino. So, I mean, obviously we're trying to pitch the water away from Heidi's area, because I know that's where it's kind of going, and trying to funnel it down toward the catch basins down the other side. And Joyce, the trees along on my side, I'm thinking of maybe putting some red maples down there, if that's permittable. Something that won't grow too tall, because I know you like the sunlight. Hopefully that would help. And then beyond, obviously, my side of the street. And the way, I mean, that's a proposal. I mean, it could flip, but I think I'm going to try to keep it where it is. I think it kind of works better.
Just the water and sewer.
And the water and
You
sewer.
don't want it to go under.
Yeah, the water and sewer line runs up the easement. Hopefully that answers some of your questions.
So I'm going to jump in real quick. This is Heather, the chair. I think what we should go forward, and we'll come back. Heidi and Joyce, I see you both want to be have some more questions. We will go into those. Those actually are 2 more steps down, where we can go back and forth between you ask us, the board asks the applicant, and back and forth. And so we can get into more nitty gritty regarding yours. Right now, after we opened it up to public comment, we're going to move to the board discussion with our initial preliminary. If we have any comments, see if we're missing information on our side for consultants, and then we'll go into questions of the applicants. Maureen, you are unmuted, so you are welcome to speak. It is now time for the board to discuss as well as you, Diab.
Thank you, Heather. I'm not going to, because I'm cognizant, as I know you are, that we have a lot of other agenda items this evening, and just to announce more for you and Diab, and I really do have to shut down at 10 o'clock. So I'm just going to throw out my questions right now, and I expect that we'll be continuing this hearing anyway. So here are my observations. I'm going to focus a little bit on I don't want to jump down to participants, but if Julie is still here, I'd love for design review to look at the street trees. There's an opportunity here to choose a tree that will absorb water. I'm very sensitive to that, because we get some water on our property, and that if you choose the right trees, they'll thrive and actually help the situation. If you choose the wrong trees, they won't do anything. So they'll die, actually. So the choice of street trees, I would highlight. The next thing is, I really am interested in what can be set up in the way of a homeowners association. Once you go into drainage, we're probably going to get some sort of need clean out and some sort of maintenance once this is constructed. So that has to be set up, and we do that with subdivisions normally. It's part of our subdivision rules and regs now. So number 3, the curbing, we normally get vertical granite curbing in our developments. I have no opinion right now on a sloped curbing, but that I associate much more with commercial parking lots. It may be the right choice. That said, I don't know. So curbing is number 3. And actually, I think that's it. Thank you. Oh, I know. Number 4 would be just the width of the road. I have been up there. It is a very narrow road as it is. And I know we can go to 18 feet if we want. 20 is fine with me if everybody wants 20. But I could imagine for the abutters, it might, and also for just absorbing more of the water, that 18 might be the better choice. So I'm just throwing that out. I'm not making a declaration in any way. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Diab?
I am happy if Beth is happy. So that's pretty much where I'm at.
I laugh.
I think you just made her happy.
Thank you.
We love you, Beth.
I think this is a great project for this road. I concur with Maureen. If it's possible to go to 18, then that would be useful. And those are all my comments.
I agree as well with everything that's been said. I am interested in actually the abutters take on reducing that to 18 feet versus 20. It'll slow traffic down, but it also, you have some other issues that would come with that. I would like to hear what they would think about that. It is much more a comfortable width for this type of this division of housing over in this area. The trees as well. I'd like to hear specifically the discussion from Joyce regarding the trees in front of that property. And if that's something of interest to them before we go through that route. And I am as well interested in the runoff on that driveway and where it goes. And if Beth has reviewed it and feels that the grading of that street works to get the water draining appropriately off that driveway, then I'm comfortable. Beth, 2 questions for you. First one is, did you feel that do you need any consultants on this, or do you feel that you got a good hold of this? Because it's mainly all engineering components regarding the subdivision.
Yeah, I don't think we need a peer review on this.
Okay. And did you have any opinion on that curbing?
The sloped versus the vertical granite?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I said, I wanted to touch base with DPW and get their opinion. More just in terms of plowing is my biggest concern. So I'll check with them, and then when we reply with the next, once we get the drainage calcs, we put another comment letter together, I'll include that information in that letter.
Okay. I'm also fine with the waivers that you noted. I'm comfortable with those as well. I don't know, Diab and Maureen, if you are comfortable with those waivers requested.
I'm fine with them.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, there were 2. There was one, the drainage calcs was asked as a waiver that was not okayed. That we need to get those drainage,
stormwater management report. Correct. Yes.
Yeah, that's a question for the applicant on when that could potentially occur.
Okay.
We're working on it right now, actually.
Okay, great.
And then the letter also from the town of Arlington.
Yeah, we should have it real soon. He's all in favor. He asked us for a few things, and we're supplying those things to him also. So.
Okay. If it's all right with the board, can we open it up to Heidi and Joyce, who are waiting to address some of the questions that we had and that came up since they last spoke?
It's Maureen. Can you just tell me what's our agenda? Because we're off. I know we started late, but we do have we're going to have to continue at some point.
Yep. After the questions of the applicant and audience members, it would go into determination of a continuation.
Okay. Let's aim it for a time, though. Can we?
I'd say no more than probably 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So Heidi and Joyce, if you can unmute yourselves, and we had specific questions of you regarding the trees and the width of the street, and then you had probably your own questions as well. So,
okay, this is Joyce. If I may beat Heidi to it,
Yep.
August and I think the tree idea is great if it could soak up the water, because in the winter, the water seeps out of the property, Mike's property, and it turns into a sheet of ice. So anything that can keep that water from impeding the school kids that live down the street from getting up to the school bus. And then also, we have watched for the 12 years we've lived here, snowplows get stuck out there and ruin their plows on some of the rocks that are in the road. So anything that can be done to alleviate, I remember Beth came and, or maybe it was the DPW came and spray painted one of the boulders that seems to be connected to bedrock, but that's still there. I assume that sort of thing would be removed.
Yes, for sure.
Okay. And then at the top of Lock Street, the DPW put in a sort of a little ridge so that the water coming down Dunster Lane from Mike's property towards Lock Street actually most of the time doesn't get onto Lock Street. Most of the time it goes into the storm basin that's right at the corner of our house. And so I didn't know if that little ridge would still be there, or if the desire is to get the Dunster Lane water to go down Lock Street.
I think that stays there, Joyce.
Well, it could stay there. It all ends up in the same location. They all come together eventually, but we could have a little bump up there to make sure that it continues to go to that catch basin.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Beth, when you review the plans, can you keep an eye out for that?
Oh, okay. Thanks.
That's what, would it be okay with you to go to an 18-foot wide road? I mean, I think that's a great idea. Definitely more grass and more area to soak up some water.
Joyce?
It doesn't matter to me. We don't drive on that road.
Okay. Okay. Heidi?
It wouldn't matter to me. Tell me again what the width of that road is currently?
I think it gets down to about 10 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's almost going to be twice as wide.
Yeah. So going from 20 to 18 feet is fine with me, because we've been dealing with a narrow road for so many years. We know how to handle it.
Okay. Great.
I have some questions.
I was going to say that you also brought up the possibility of water seeping out of the slope on that side, but Beth asked us to put in a stone trench along the high side of the road.
Okay.
So that will, that should alleviate any bleed out by grabbing it and then draining down to the new catch basin.
Where exactly will that new catch basin be?
It's right at the end. Well, there's two of them, one on each side of the road, because you're going to have a high point in the road. It's going to be crowned, so water will end up going from the center line of the road to either side, and then you've got a catch basin on either side of the road. It's in green on this plan. Yeah, that's one of them, and then across the street. No, that's a manhole.
Oh, whoops.
Go
there.
There you go. Yep, those two right there. So those are the new catch basins.
So
and,
the one on my side of the street, which the hand was on, the other side is the other side of the street. My house, right?
Yeah, keep going the opposite side.
Up.
Sorry. This one.
Yeah, right there.
Yep.
So that to me looks like, if this is drawn a little bit to scale, that where in the front of my property will that be?
It looks like there's a existing driveway just down slope from that, so it's going to be approximately 10 feet up from that existing driveway.
So it will probably be smack in front of my property then.
Well, it's going to be underground.
Be in the road.
Because right now, the driveway is where a lot of it goes to. So ideally, it would be great to be able to, if that could be at the upside of my property, so it doesn't even come down as much into my property.
Well, we're going to have a gutter there, so we're going to pitch it. We put the road so that the road is slightly lower than the abutting properties.
Okay.
so that there'll be a gutter there, so it'll run down the gutter like a traditional road, and then all the properties will pitch up, so the water won't go on to the existing properties. That was important to the way we did the design.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, I really am concerned with how that's going to affect my property because, as I said, my property used to be flat and now it's not. It's a hill. So,
Yeah. I mean, that was very important in the way we laid this out, so that we made sure that water didn't pitch. I mean, we're gonna have curbing. There's no curbing there now, so that's going to be about 5 inches of relief right there. That's going to the water will run along, and then of course where the driveways are in the existing budding properties, it will come up, from the gutter.
That's another question about the curbing, though. Is that a necessary thing in order to do the drainage? Or is
that's you kind of need that to channel the water.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in. This is Beth. The curbing is a benefit to you because that keeps the water in the street and keeps it from running onto your property, which is what is happening now. So you definitely want the curbing there.
Right.
Prevents erosion.
I understand that. I just wanted to verify whether it was part of a component or something that you're just adding on to benefit everybody.
Thank you.
Pretty standard.
Thank you, everyone. So going forward, I believe that's all the questions. Deb and Maureen, are you all set?
Yes.
All right. Do we want to determine a continuation of a hearing at this point?
I'm going to move that we continue the hearing, and we'll need to, I don't know what you recommend or Brian recommends for when we continue, but we need a time certain.
At the moment, the next meeting we're definitely meeting is on next Tuesday, the 14th. So I would say then.
Okay. So
and Tuesday, the April 14th at 7:35 p.m. Acceptable?
Heather, we need to. It's Maureen.
Before we agree to that date, I just want to, we haven't received those calculations yet.
Sorry, Beth,
this week in the engineering department.
We can't hear you, Beth.
Trying to be realistic about our ability to review any calculations in a timely manner for meeting next Tuesday.
Okay. So if those who can't hear Beth, what she just said is that given them 1 week with everything going on right now, that they may need more time to review documents that need to come in to get ready for a subdivision.
So we're meeting on the 12th. So is that good?
Sooner.
Of May, you mean?
Yes.
So a month and a week out?
Sooner than that?
You can do sooner.
Can we do sooner?
Sooner than that, right?
We should have
right now we're meeting the 7th and the 14th, and then May 12th and the 19th. We could change that, but this is when we're meeting at the moment, 7th and the 14th, and the 12th and the 19th.
19th.
I am available to do the 21st if we want to push it out. Beth, would 2 weeks, do you feel comfortable with that, or do you feel you need more?
She hasn't even received the calculations yet.
It depends when I get the calculations.
We'll jump right on those.
Upon that letter from the town of Arlington, which I think is.
If it's not there on the 21st, then we just continue it again.
Oh, Heather, I'm going to say I don't want to meet that many times. This is hard.
I would say the easiest thing, without a doubt, is still to continue it to the 14th. We'll know more information then, and we can always call another meeting in a week or two, or do it to the next one. But we can't make a decision now. We'll have more. The only known time that seems reasonable is on the 14th. We know we won't have the calculations, but we can at least continue it until then.
And in terms of the applicant, are you very clear on what all the things that we are looking for and are missing at this point?
I believe so. John?
Okay. Yeah, well, we did send out new plans in a response letter, and I think pretty much other than the drainage pre and post analysis, I think we've hit everything in the latest plans.
There were, if you have the street trees in, those need to come in your landscaping plans. Design review is going to review those tomorrow along with the stone walls, although you're not touching the stone walls, those are pre-existing. And
Legal has to look at the homeowners.
Well, so yeah, that was the whole thing I was going to say is that there has been, we haven't requested that as of yet, so we just did, so they haven't been able to work on that or anything. If we are requesting that, we should probably say that.
Is that part of the road improvement, or is that part of my building permit for?
No, no, it has to do with the fact that this is a private road, and the idea is that it needs to be worked out on who would be maintaining any of these drainage structures.
Well, that I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't. I think it's certainly part of this process that it's very important to. But I don't think it has to do with.
You were talking about the walls, though, Brian.
Well, that's different. It's a homeowners association.
Yeah, no, just talking about the drainage structures at the moment. But I would imagine that some type of homeowners association document, but that would have to be talked about. So that could be something that we can talk about at least at our next meeting, even if the engineering calculations aren't there. Is that we can talk to the road owners currently and try to get them. Try to make something of that, because the ownership of it is important.
Okay.
This is Maureen. Brian, I think that some of that should happen outside our meeting, because they will need and want, rightfully, just some explanation. But just as you can meet with residents outside of the meeting, this strikes me as appropriate. We don't need all of us to be gathered to hear you explain what's involved.
Okay. That's
Agreed.
Fine.
Yeah, no, it's agreed. And also, I mean, the idea is that everyone would have to agree to that homeowners association anyway, which maybe that doesn't happen. But so it's unclear what would happen there. But yes, it does not have to happen at the table, Maureen.
Okay.
So I want to make a motion to continue the hearing on the subdivision to April 14th. Sounds as if we're going to put it right at the front, but I'm going to repeat, we need to get in the habit of approving minutes. So I'm going to say at 7:45.
Move to continue to April 14th at 7:45 for the Lock Street subdivision. That was the motion that was just put forth by Maureen.
do we have a second? You're on mute.
Did we lose him?
He's here.
Yeah.
There he is.
Okay, sorry. I've been muting my phone. Anyway, so yes, there's a second.
Right.
And just to, can I just make sure I got down what the things are? So we're looking for drainage calculations, a letter from the Arlington engineer, and Brian, you're going to lead some sort of effort on the homeowners agreement?
Well, I'm going to explore it. I mean,
okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's not to say that
Okay.
everyone's going to come to agreement in any amount of time, or that they're going to come to an agreement at all. So it's
No, I understand. I'm just trying to understand who's taking the lead on that. Okay.
And then there's also the street trees on both sides. Design review will give their feedback directly to the applicant tomorrow. And then there's also the reduction of the width of the road from 20 to 18 feet.
Okay.
Curbing is going to, curbing, the DPW is going to give their recommendation on the curbing.
Yep.
Maureen mentioned for standard instead of the sloped.
Yep.
But we're waiting on DPW. And then Beth, I have a note for you about the stone trench. Those are the items I have noted as my things that I'm looking for.
Okay.
So the stone trench is already proposed.
Is it in the drawing?
Yep.
All right.
Not the one that's on.
I haven't reviewed the drawings you sent yesterday, but it sounds like they added it.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to note that Beth will look at stone trench.
To make sure it's all in the new drawings.
Okay.
Thank you. Any more discussion on the vote?
Nope.
All those in favor, we need to do a roll call.
It's Maureen. Aye.
And Diab says aye.
Heather Von Mering says aye. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the hearing procedure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are going to take a minute and move onward to our next agenda item, which is, pull my agenda, the Dennis Carlone for a short brief update on 10 Converse Place and 654 Main Street. There was some questions from residents about feedback on this. It was not intended to have public comment at this time. We are not bringing the development teams for either of these sites to the conversation this evening. It's really just to speak with our consultant and get an update from them, because I didn't want to go longer without updates from our consultant. So it's a brief update. And if there is public comment, we would allow a lot more time given the interest of these two sites. Dennis, are you here? Is Dennis here?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Hi, Dennis. We're a little bit behind schedule, so if you, although I believe we can make it up at town meeting articles, but why don't you kick us off and give us an update?
Well, I'm assuming you've all read the 2-page summary that is in front of us on the screen. Is that accurate? I'm sorry, is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. So Brian and I have been remotely meeting with the development team on both projects. In fact, today we met a second time since we last spoke on Converse Place, and they have submitted a revised submission, which you can look at later, basically analyzing the essence of this report, and that is a 6-story scheme with setbacks at the upper 2 floors versus a 5-story scheme with a setback at the top floor. The obvious difference is it's made up in the size of the footprint, which crowds the open space at Mill Pond fairly significantly. As I wrote in the review and under project evaluation at the bottom of the first page, I'm basing my comments on the urban design analysis I did, the guidelines I worked with the town on, and the existing zoning. That sure, there needs to be a lot of study, but I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that the taller scheme, if you allow the 3.0 FAR to be met, the taller scheme is superior from a public domain point of view. And then the question is, can we ameliorate, can we refine the upper floors to fit in? And as you read in the review, I made a few comments: the color of the slate, the profile, and we talked to the development team about this. They started looking at that in the latest submission, but more work has to be done. And the basic question they asked is, even in the taller scheme, is the base building, the 4 to 5-story brick portion, is that fine? And focusing on really reworking or working on the top portion. In my mind, there's still more work in the base portion, of course, but that's really a number of conditions the planning board can write, which you've already stated about wanting to have a tripart building. I won't go into what you've stated and other things. And the top is going to need extensive study. There's no question of that. That's my recommendation. I think there's only 3 of you there tonight, maybe 4, and we can discuss that and then can go on to the other project on Main Street if you wish. But I believe I summarized it fairly quickly and accurately.
Yeah, I didn't know what Heather had in mind. My guess is that one was certainly to talk about height and its relation to open space, but I didn't know if planning board members had very specific questions. It looks like Maureen has her hand up. Why don't we go to Maureen for any questions for Dennis?
So I certainly will want to see both what you're calling, Dennis, the 5-story proposal, as well as the 6-story proposal. I've heard from, and we've collectively heard from many, many people in town. I've heard independently and then through people sending things to the whole board. The concept of what I'm assuming when we say 6 stories is at 69 feet is still really, really high. So while it might look like for the public space that it's appealing, and the public space may be appealing, I'm still having real doubts about going to that height. So we'll see them. Now I'm seeing these images, which I welcome to see on the screen. Wait, hang on there, right there, that one that says, let's see, it's on proposed building. Here's where I really need the levels. And I need, I know one comment that I heard from somebody was about going above the roof line of Town Hall. So I'm going to be looking for elevations along Mount Vernon Street that capture the Brown and Stanton block. The height, which I see right here, is 44 feet, if I've got that correct, as well as the Town Hall. And just the relationship of this building, that to me is it's a commercial building, and Town Hall's really the one I still see as dominant. So I really do have serious doubts about that 69 feet, for even if the space is good. So we've got to keep going. I want to see the elevations that run along the entire Mount Vernon Street from Town Hall to the Brown and Stanton, and also something similar. Somebody else pointed out, it wasn't my brilliant idea, but that we also do need not these perspective drawings so much as just to get a view that would tell us what we see from Main Street without the distortion of the perspectives, but just to get the roof lines. And so, in other words, to capture the new building along with Town Hall. The other thing I wanted to add is that I'm really interested in dealing with that roof line. I've not seen where we are as you have, Dennis, but the idea of lanterns, I just have not bought into that. I think the idea of the half story was a story that has real dormers, and the lantern thing just is a stretch to basically add another story where instead we're looking for dormers. Oh, and one more thing, you did comment somewhere, and I think it was here, about, yes, it was about chimneys. And I think I liked that idea. It's much shorter building, but the Locatelli block in Winchester does have defined chimneys, and they're really pretty. So that's another thing to, at least I'll be curious to see what comes out of that. Thank you.
If we could just quickly look at the Mount Vernon renderings, I understand or the next sheet. No, the Mount Vernon renderings. Well, even this, there's the existing building. Just go, thank you. Then the next building, which is, I believe, the 5-story. No, it's the 6-story.
Yep.
And the 1-story structure on the left in our lifetime won't likely be there. We should keep that in mind. And then the next one is the 5-story. You can see how much closer it is to the water. And if we could look at the side elevations, I don't recall where they are, Brian, yes, thank you. So there's the 5-story, and then there's the 6-story. So you can see what changes. Now, the details will get worked out. Simple as that. And again, in your conditions, you can simply say that certain profiles have to change, coloration, texture, perhaps the setbacks are different at the top floor above the brick base. You can see that they began articulating the ground floor different than the base building, and then, of course, the setbacks at the top. If you go to Mount Vernon, which I think is before this, we could stay there. There's the 5-story. Again, the length of the building going toward the left versus the 6-story. I totally understand Maureen's concern on height. I need guidance from the planning board on this. I told you what my feeling is. And I'm going by the zoning, the guidelines, the urban design plan, which is different here than what I've shown, but I'm doing in the spirit that this is a real building and not just an urban design scheme, and the planning board recommendations. Yes, it's a different scale. It's a different time. It's 100 years later. It's being built in an area where we're trying to gain open space. There's virtually no private land open space in the downtown. If the town were to take land by eminent domain, that would be different, but that doesn't sound like it's going to happen. You've read what I've told the development team about the profile of the upper portion of the building. This is their first attempt at trying to reduce the impact. So I don't know what more to say. I've given you my thoughts. I'm pretty convinced that this architectural team can make this a wonderful building. But the stronger the planning board statements, obviously, the more that the top of the building will convey a 2020 vision of fitting into downtown, of paying homage to downtown. So that's where I am. I don't know what more to say about that.
Dennis, in terms of 3.0 versus slightly reducing that, why? I mean, 3.0 is, is pushing it to the max, right? And so when I look at the 5-story versus 6-story, there's ways you could take that 6-story and push it way back so you can't actually very much see it, and create more green space on that roof for residents. I know in Brookline, there's a lot of the taller buildings that are residential. They do have those rooftop gardens so that story is more hidden from the public walkway. But then those are actually, that green space on that roof is very sought after. Because that's the only outdoor space they have. So what I'm wondering is, everything they show is always to the max. It's almost as high as you can go, minus a couple feet, full coverage. And where is the room to say, can't you just pull a little bit of that off or cut a little bit of it back? So you don't have the this full fill out of the massing. I do prefer the shorter looking and the way that they're currently designing the building and breaking it down. I don't think the architecture is there to take on that 6-story the way they currently have it laid out. That's why I'm bringing on the rooftop gardens and stuff to pull that 6-story way back if they want to go to that 6-story. You can see how much more comfortable the less stories feels when you look at the perspective, looking at brown Stanton block aligned with it. Yes, we would lose more open space if you kept pushing and saying we have to go to the 3.0. But my question is, do we really have to go for the 3. You can have the 3.0, but when things aren't aligning with everything else that's in that zoning.
Well, you can certainly vote on the 3.0 or not. Generally, when you have a series of guidelines and the developer meets them, at least in my experience, even if it's not a perfect design, they get that, but that's entirely up to you.
Mhm.
And I guess you have the right to do that. That would be a legal question. But you can, yes, as I said, you can make conditions that that need to be fulfilled.
Well, I think really with the current design and to get the character of this site in place, they have to go to a shorter building, is really what it comes down to. If they're going for a different style or a different, especially at the top, and how they move down in scale and massing towards the top, I don't think they have hit that in this current scheme. That's where I'm at. So if they were to change the scheme and get more of the massing reduction and at that top level, then I'd be more comfortable with the 6. Like I said from day one, and you saw their notes of what I said is, I'm fine with the height as long as the design is there. The design is not getting there. You think we can massage it and work it through there. I'm not as confident as you are with that. I guess really goes to Diab and Maureen on what your thoughts are on the two kind of massings of the shorter versus the taller, more coverage as well. I would love your feedback. I also would love to hear from when we go back to opening it up to public comment and development team to hear everyone else's perspective as well when we go down this route.
Ryan, could you go to the 5-story?
Yep.
It just seems so tall compared to the human scale. Also, Dennis, when you look at this, do we get more square footage of commercial in this when we spread it out?
It's approximately the same. There is some extra ground floor space that is not designated near the between the restaurant terrace eating area and the lobby. There is some space that's undefined.
And
again, this was all done in a week, but
yeah, no, I know. And this just feels so much more comfortable to me. Maureen and Diab, you're welcome to speak. You don't need to raise your hand.
Yeah. Well, I want to jump in then because I'm on a phone lag as usual. So I am also concerned about the height. I'm with Heather in that I'm okay with the height if the design comes in, and I'm really still very uncomfortable with the design. It doesn't seem to be a unified building, and it just seems, the 5-story building does seem at a much more human scale. However, I am really uncomfortable with giving up that open space. Albeit it's still more open space than we have there now. So I'm back to, again, the question I had myself this afternoon was, can we go for a lower FAR? How does that affect it? If we just try to reduce the mass of that building, maybe they'll come up with a brilliant design for the upper story, the 6th story, but so far I'm not seeing it. And that's pretty much where I'm at.
Maureen, go ahead.
Well, this is the first time I've seen these images, so that's also just concerning. I do think that there's this process of pre-application versus filed application, so we're not hearing from the community. But I want to say I do respond to what I've been hearing from the community, and we're at 69 feet. That is just a new it sets a new standard for height and a different concept of what Winchester Center is. So I'm going back to the 5 feet, or 5-story rather. Yeah, 5 feet. It's a midget building. No, the 5-story building. And I think if we can get a usable small exterior space, it does not have to be huge. I can think of some of us know that right on Thompson Street, right next to the Fuller Cup, there's this dinky little alley that gets some cafe chairs planted there. That's kind of I think it's better than that. But I do think that a small shaped space is still possible. I do think that people could be using it's something more to think about. Right by the town hall, somebody had put out a picnic table and picnic table bench arrangement that we might want to be thinking about how is it to complement a new construction there. We might want to do some landscape work to encourage outdoor eating on the town-owned property as well. So I'm really, first of all, want to be able to see these images sent to us so all the board can see them and get them posted online so that the community can see them and get some further feedback. So we're not just three of us making this enormous direction in terms of the town.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Please keep in mind, they did these drawings to convey what I asked them to do. At last meeting, I said we should do a 5-story scheme so they did that for your viewing, not to circumvent a process. The other thing I wanted to mention is, at least I think, the upper floors are where the money is, where the profit is, if you will, and having terraces at the upper floors. That's why I think there can be more terraces. The 6th floor being set back a little bit for like bedroom terraces, make those duplexes. The developer hasn't asked for that. I just suggested it. So they wouldn't all be flat. They in the same plane. The next floor up might be set back a little bit. As far as cutting the FAR, anybody that comes in on a PUD is shooting for the maximum. And I assume they'll do the 5-story if you want, but this is maybe not as tall, but is a bigger building. And it's certainly nothing like any of the historic buildings. It's much bigger than that in floor plate.
Yeah, well, we also knew that this site was going to get something, that we were going to get a lot of the growth at this particular site as well. Changes is sometimes harder to this was a site that was designated as a growth site. So I'm not scared of the massing. It'll definitely help if the building where the ice cream shop and gets redeveloped as well to be a transitional piece. That has a different height on it, that corner, if I remember correctly, as well. So it's a good transitional height. It's just not there right now to give it the transitional height of a Mount Vernon to there. It doesn't fall in the PUD, if I remember correctly. Okay, do you want to give an update on the other site as well, Dennis?
Yes, the other site really is 654 Main Street, as I wrote. Much progress verbally was made in the meeting that we had. Is this a new presentation, Brian?
No, this is not a new one. This is the one from March 24th.
Okay.
And we haven't seen anything new, nor
there is. Yep.
We're asked to respond to it this evening. It was just an update on where you are with them and your conversations.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what Brian was showing. That's why I asked, because we made some suggestions at our last design team discussion, which I think will improve the project. So I think there's progress being made. One of the big issues is, probably the biggest, is that if we want to take this shape, the L shape, and break it down a little bit between what's on Martin Street and what's on Elmwood, and even near the residential structure that's being restored, again, the FAR at 2.5 gets challenged. And you're going to love this. I suggested on all four sides with terraces that sort of became the duplex again, the bedrooms for the unit below at the fourth floor, so that there could be notches at the new residential entry we're proposing now is on Elmwood. I don't know. Thank you, Brian. Right in that area. And so retail is all that's on Main Street. And the ramp becomes one way from the bottom corner going toward the lobby. And then the lobby could become an outdoor eating area if there's a restaurant there, or just a lobby that leads to the retail. And then there could be a notch from 4 floors down to 3 floors at the corner on Vine near the house to begin the transition better to the residential wooden structure. So that's the big idea there. We talked about geometry. We talked about cleaning up the facade so they were better balanced on Mount Vernon, and that the piece on Elmwood could be treated differently. So it isn't one long building of the same massing. But Elmwood could have a more non-Main Street feel, more residential feel solely, since that's what it is. And Main Street could be more of a Main Street building with ground floor retail. We would try to make the Main Street building, we are talking about making it tripartite, base, middle, top. We didn't get to that on the Elmwood wing, although in a way it would also be 3 pieces as well, although it's only a little more than 3 floors in height on Elmwood. This isn't ready to come forward. We have a meeting later on this week to look at the further design development. I felt Converse Place was much closer, is closer for your review, despite what your conclusions are. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. There's been a lot of feedback, Dennis, from the residents along Vine Street of just really focusing on transitioning from the single-family residential units into that building. I know there is written in, because I actually pushed for it back in the day for the Center Business District, to really, there is language in there about how you transition from that into these more FAR sized buildings, and that it is a requirement in the zoning that they do that. So just keep your eye out on that.
Well, there's some minor things that we talked about, such as increasing the distance between the new building and the old and getting tighter to the property lines, given that there is a good side yard in the adjoining house. It would be indistinguishable, except the historic restored building would have more distance. I guess you discussed this earlier because I was brought it up in our design meeting, and that is turning the historic house 90 degrees. But I know you brought that up, and that was not thought to be positive. That's what I would recommend.
Okay, thank you. Maureen, do you have anything before we move on? I do have a question for you outside of this particular site.
It would be helpful even if it's, I hate the afternoon, but I can live with it. If you end up with some sort of presentation or designs again, and we're discussing them with you, Dennis, or this is also to Brian, just as we just saw the Converse Place, it would be helpful if we could see them ahead of time. Those images from Converse Place just flashed by me so fast, and it helps to see them ahead of time. And also, as soon as they come in, could they just be posted so other people who are joining us for the meeting can also see them?
We we got them this morning.
Yeah, because since we didn't ask them to prepare anything for Friday because they weren't presenting.
They were preparing for this meeting. They were preparing for their discussions.
We were just working.
No,
That's right.
But even if Brian could forward those to us, and again, they could be posted on as part of the meeting packet for everybody to see, it would be helpful.
Okay. So Dennis, as you get things, Maureen's asking if the planning board can get CC'd on those just to see them.
Yeah, thank you.
And then obviously planning board, if you have comments, they can only go directly to, they can't go to the board. They have to go, we can only talk about it in the meetings.
Right.
Heather, there have been, I think you made it clear, but I wasn't sure. There is no public comment for either of these sites because a number of people had chatted and raised hands to see if whether or not there was going to be a public portion.
No, we're going to do that at our next meeting. We just wanted to get an update of what Dennis was up to.
Okay. Wanted to get that. Okay.
Yeah, in his first conversations without us present.
Sure.
But the next question then goes to wrapping up this topic with the planning board. Dia, Maureen, going forward, how do you want to take care of these two sites? We have been getting questions about we should be freezing the conversations through this. Brian and I have been working with the town manager and following. We were supposed to be going with our planning board business to follow the regulations coming in from the state. And I'm not sure how to proceed, and I'm looking for guidance on what is the best thing to do at this point.
Before we go in, just the most updated legislation says that if we do receive an application of any kind, we don't have a deadline. We're not under any deadlines. So
that came in recently.
Right. So so I think it's understood that if any application, so as of right now, the only application that the planning board has on file that is working on is the one that we just opened this evening in terms of new application, which was the Lock Street, because it started long before any of these remote participation meetings. Before we get to planning board, I just want to say that I don't think it makes sense to entertain new applications throughout this remote process. That I'll just do full stop there, and we have the right to do that. We can delay them all until after the emergency order is over, so there's no problems that we would have. So that would be my vote, that no new applications.
I want to jump in and say I agree that it's that's the whole purpose. It was legislation. It passed through our state House and Senate. It was a bill that passed, and at this point, where some people have better access than others to the visuals. There is a problem. We have various times, we have not had Betsy Kreger join us since we've been meeting remotely, and Heather Hannon isn't with us this evening. But I also believe very strongly that we need, when we do a filing, that we should accept the filing and get started, that there's a process that includes the public. And right now, it is really difficult.
So, are you specific? I mean, in terms of applications, I agree with Brian. We don't hold and we don't do the public hearing. These are not applications; these are pre-application meetings. And so the question is, now that this new legislation has come in, do we want to encourage stopping pre-application meetings, or do we want to continue?
Well, I did look back at the zoning bylaw, and it actually says a pre-application meeting. It describes the pre-application process twofold. One is with the planner, and then it describes the meeting with the board. So I think that this process that's been multiple steps is really now going on awfully long. The objective of meeting with the planner is a different concept. We are in this, to me, unappealing or undesirable situation where we haven't invoked 53G. I'd really be a lot more comfortable if I know that the funding is now in place and that we bring the design consultant in where the funding's all, where there's money held in escrow and it's right there and it will be released as needed.
Deb, did you have any?
Okay, so can I? Yeah, for some reason I keep getting muted. So, so I concur that we should not be moving forward on any actual official applications given to us because I think it is difficult to do a public hearing in this form. I, however, do think that these pre-application meetings are extremely useful. I know that, as Maureen pointed out, perhaps having several of them wasn't in the letter of the regulations, but certainly we've been talking for years about getting people in early so that the applications we do get are much improved over the ones we've seemed to have been getting recently. So that's where I stand on those. Maureen, I understand your desire to have money in escrow for design, but that does require that they actually put in an official application, at which point we would essentially have to freeze this entire process, from my understanding, because then we wouldn't have pre-application meetings.
So
and we would have to wait
I just want to read the zoning. It's 7.3.6, so you might make a note of that. Prior to submitting a building application for a project in the CBD, the applicant shall meet with the town planner to discuss the project. The town planner will coordinate, if appropriate, a pre-application meeting. It's not a meeting or meetings, that's law. So it's a pre-application meeting with the SPGA, that's us, let's see, or administrative with representatives of other town boards, commissions, and departments. The purposes of the pre-application process are to inform the applicant of town objectives as they relate to the applicant's site and to answer questions and concerns in order to streamline the review process. Well, this hasn't really been streamlined anyway. And to my mind, it's really been a problem getting our full board here as well as getting the participation of the community. So I'm pretty, we've got a whole lot of people watching now. I think that's great, but it's, I can't tell. A lot of them are development team, and I think there might be 4 or 5 people from the neighborhood. But the process is problematic to me. There it is. Thank you.
Can I just say that the alternative is that we're not doing anything for the next several months.
Well, we have lots.
And so the question is, on this particular project, if we're going to cease having, and I think we only had 1 or 2 meetings lined up, and I think this may have been, we had 1 more meeting with them. I know we agreed on a finite number.
Yes, we had 1 more agreed to that we told them in a meeting that we would be willing to.
We're not, pushing these out for, several weeks. So what I don't understand is if we decide not to have these meetings, does that benefit us? Because when they submit the proposal, we're still going to have the same issues with having enough board members. And since we've decided we're not going to have public hearings until we can actually meet in person, I don't know that not having 1 more meeting actually hurts things. I mean, that's where I'm coming at is I don't see that there's a problem having another meeting because we're still going to have the full board when we have the public hearings, when they submit an actual proposal.
Why I prefer,
and I'm done.
Yeah, I prefer the pre-application meetings the way that they currently are going, because once they apply, all communication of the board shuts down. So all communication to the applicant shuts down, all discussions to the public shuts down, and it all becomes very only at the table do we speak about it. We can't go and have conversations with the residents about it. It really becomes a very closed process. And so we can hold on pre-application meetings and beg the development team to wait until we can meet in person and can, make it easier for some residents. But I think that's going to hurt because as soon as they apply, all communication closes on the planning board's part. And that is what town meeting struggled with and allowed and changed who the permit granting authority was to the planning board So, because we can have the ability to have these pre-application meetings. So that's where I'm at. And that's why I'm like, okay, one more meeting. And I mean, they have been continually saying the same thing. Dennis I feel has a good feel of where we're going, what our also understanding is of the zoning and where our points are on that. I just waiting. It doesn't help anything by forcing them to go into an application without one more meeting. That's kind of where I'm at. Previously, a lot of the pre-application meetings were done behind closed doors. This current sitting board is not for that and wants everything done at the table. Now it's saying, well, at the table is too hard for people to get to, so we should just stop all communication. I'm turning in circles regarding the whole thing because I want everything to be as open and available to the public as possible. I also don't want that to just halt everything beyond where things are currently halted as it is just with everything going on in the world. So I am torn about this. I've been seeing the comments coming in from residents and it goes both ways. And so I'm not sure what the answer is, and that's why I'm asking you guys for some guidance on it. And that's kind of where I'm at. And I think, it's been pretty engaging in a lot of ways for residents. We did send a memo out. We can do another round of memos to update all the residents and the butters of these sites again. Usually in this situation, the press would have picked it up, but the press right now is very preoccupied with some other things going on. So it would have also already hit the press that what's going on. We could try as a board to reach out to the press to see if they'll put focus on what actually is going on in the pre-application for these two sites and some of the preliminary, design sketches. That's the other side that's missing from this. And some of it has to do with where we are and what the press is focused on as well.
My biggest concern, and I think that was pointed out by one of the people who sent a letter to the board, was that the board would be perceived as essentially doing the bidding of the developer, that somehow we are being co-opted by having these pre-application meetings. And I think the board's history of how we decided on the previous proposal at 654 Main Street is indicative of the fact that the board is not being co-opted rather. And I really want to prevent another situation where we have a developer put together a proposal, go through a lot of work, come up with something which is totally inappropriate, and then we have to shut them down at a late date. And as you were mentioning, Heather, a much more constrained opportunity for the public to comment. I mean, the fact that we've been able to have the public comment for several months now, when they would normally get a much shorter period of time to comment, I think is a real positive for this particular approach. But I do understand that people may feel that we are being co-opted, and I don't know how to say anything other than that we aren't. But I guess the proof is in the pudding.
We are, okay, sorry, I don't know where I got cut off, but I'm going to go back to, next item is town meeting articles. We can postpone this to our next meeting.
Yeah.
We have one issue with that, which we'll put after Abbey Road, which has to do with our budget and an update on what's going on with the budget article for our department. But we can come back to that after Abbey Road. I'd rather get to our Abbey Road. I know town council is waiting, and so is town engineering. So let's move on to Abbey Road, and then we'll bring in the budget thereafter if we have time.
Well, hang on, Heather, can we just wrap up though for Dennis? Is Dennis still here? I can't see.
Yes, he is. He's muted right now.
Okay. Just
he's unmuted.
to know that I'm looking for like this particular slide. And thank you to Brian for putting it on the screen. But these, I definitely want to see, get these images, and I want to see more of this, the elevations, the what should I call them? The full frontal elevation. So I get the idea of relative scale in context, not with perspective, but actually just straight on elevation.
The architectural drawings, the true architectural drawings.
Right. So I can get the scale, and I do want to, but and at the same time, I want to see the site plan for the 5-story and what has happened with the open space, because I can't grasp that from the perspective.
That's all in there. It's all in here.
Elevation.
But, yeah.
Pardon?
It's in here. A lot of what you want is already in here.
Fast.
But,
so I want to see that, and then I think if we're going to have one more meeting, it's certainly I want to echo what I want to see the 5-story, and that's what I'm hearing from the community. So if we're telling people they should feel free to send us letters, I'm reading. And I'm hearing bring this height down.
Yeah, so that's a big thing that's coming. Dennis, are you getting copied on all the letters coming in from the residents?
No, I can do that.
Brian, can you please make sure all those letters go directly to Dennis, just so you see them? Thank you. That's a big thing coming through, is everyone wants a height down. Get the heights down on both sites.
I agree that we should, if we're with this agenda, I think it does make sense to move on to Abbey Road.
So going forward, Maureen and Diab, are you okay if we do one last meeting pre-app and then call it for each site?
Yeah, and I think it should be, we need some opportunity for people to speak. So
this wasn't really meant to talk about, this is to get the update, but
right.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I think we need to do a larger window of time for the last one as well, for the public to speak.
Agree.
And us also to ask questions to the public as well, because it's our last chance really to have that conversation with them about.
Yeah, well, I'm good with that.
Okay. So going forward, let's go on to Abbey Road, and so we can keep going, because I know, Maureen, you have about 20 minutes left. Brian, do you want to give an update, and then Beth give an update, and Legal give an update?
Sure, I'll go super quick here. The last vote that the planning board made on April 24th was to have a tri-party agreement that it was for the release of all 5 lots contingent upon a tri-party agreement that totaled $200,000, and with with Heather Von Mering and Diab Jarius the ones to negotiate the rest of that tri-party agreement. At the time, it was $200,000 because the inspections and punch lists had not been ready in time for the meeting. Subsequent from that meeting, the engineering department came up with their estimate for the work that has not been completed and inspected. That total is now it was 200,000 as a general placeholder. That's what the vote was. It was going to put 200,000. Now we have the memo from the engineer, which outlines $108,000. This was in your packet. This has been distributed to, and both our attorney and their attorneys have gone through this, and basically at periodic times there will be a request from the applicant to inspect, and I think we're getting right around, I think it's 2 weeks. The idea is whenever there's a request that there would be some type of an inspection and memo done 2 weeks before any meeting in order for it to even be remotely possible for that. So the quote that we have now is based upon work that was done as of yesterday. Here is April 6th. With the visit taking place on April 1st. So that's all I have for that. I'd probably just turn it over to Beth for any further information.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes,
Hey, Beth.
thank you.
So Brian's right. So I actually did a memo previous to this memo that you have in front of you here last week that has a lot more detail in it. So if you want to, I don't know, Brian, if you have that available, but if the board has questions about the specific kind of status of things and how we got to where we are, I updated the memo from February 12th, I think I did, or from at some point in February, with the punch list, updated it with the status of everything. As you mentioned, we went out last Wednesday and met with the applicant to review some changes he had proposed and took a look at things then. Since that time, he has poured the handicap ramps on the site. Those have been looked at by DPW. So we removed those items from the punch list and from the cost estimate. So the estimate that we were looking at last week was like 118,000. With those items removed, we're down to 108,000, which is our recommendation at this point.
The side of it too that I want to bring up is the actual, when the planning board made the vote last week, prior, it was tied to 200,000 being tied to the execution of the tri-party agreement. That was not what was coming in thereafter. And so Deb and I could no longer work on the tri-party agreement. And so I'm going to let legal discuss that as well, about what they are asking the planning board to be willing to do financially. So I believe he's here, right?
Yep.
Yep.
I've just there.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. Go for it.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So the sticking point in the tripartite agreement has been the board's insistence and Deb and Heather's insistence on behalf of the board on funding up front of the tripartite agreement rather than the money being put in for it when the last lots are sold. As far as we understand, the first 3 lots will essentially pay off the bank loan. The last 2 lots, there's a fair amount of equity, we are told. And so the developer's position has been that there's enough equity there and they will fund the escrow for the tripartite agreement when the last lots are sold. But that's not where the planning board and its members want it to be. So 2 things have happened. Beth described one of them, which is the number has come down. The 200 was just a placeholder. It came down to 118. He did a few more of the smaller items that Beth mentioned. It came down to 108. There are a number of other things that he is doing or maybe has done, but at some point we said we can't, that is engineering said, we can't keep inspecting on a rolling basis every day. So we're cutting it off at the 108. But if you've done other things or do other things, you can come back for partial release in the normal course. So it's come down to 108. It may come down more, but that's where it is for tonight. And on the other side, the developer and its counsel has been working with their bank, Rockland Trust. Rockland Trust, I had understood, was not willing. There were no undispersed funds, loan proceeds that it was willing to hold back in escrow, and was not willing to provide any additional funding. But as of today, the developer has said Rockland Trust will disperse some undispersed loan funds or dedicate those funds and reduce its payout from the first few lots to the point of providing funding of $65,000 toward the escrow for the tripartite agreement. And so the structure that was discussed on the phone today, without Deb and Heather, but with Brian and me, Beth, you weren't on the call, but you saw the emails, and the developer and his counsel, were that if you released all 5 lots tonight, 3 of those lots, when those 3 lots are sold, the $65,000, or when the tripartite is signed, the $65,000 will be committed for that escrow. And so three of the lots, it's roughly 3/5. Three of the lots is 3/5 the total. 65 is roughly 3/5 of 108. So the math actually works out fortuitously. So three of the lots would fund 65 in the escrow, and then the other two lots the release would not take effect yet. I would hold those releases until a closing on the fourth and fifth lots, which may or may not be numbers 4 and 5, but the fourth and fifth lots. I would hold those, and at that closing, those two lots get released, they're sold, and the remainder of the escrow, the tripartite agreement, gets funded. So it gets funded in two chunks. Could be the two lots are sold first and then the three, but either way, you'll have 65 toward the escrow funding for the tripartite when no more than 3 lots are sold. And when the remaining lots are sold, you'll have the rest of it. So that seems to me to be a workable structure. I think Brian was comfortable with it. Well, obviously, you want to hear from him directly. And so what you'd be voting on tonight, I sent Brian a new motion. Brian, did you get that? I hope. I sent you a motion. You were already in the meeting. It was 8:26, but there it is.
It's on now.
Yeah, good. Okay. So it's a new motion, which again defers to Heather or delegates to Heather and Diab to negotiate and approve and sign a tripartite agreement, now only in the amount of 108. That tripartite agreement will specify what I've said, which is that not all 5 lot releases will take effect yet. They will take effect in 2 pieces when the 2 groups of lots are sold. It will have to have some other language in case those deals fall through and they're sold one at a time, but we'll figure that out. The point is you will have, you're getting a proportional amount at least of the funding up front, though the finances of the developer apparently do not permit you to get all the funding up front, but the funding will stay ahead of the lot releases in the tripartite agreement.
So let me jump in real quick with a comment, and that is that since we're not a secured party, or whatever the correct word is, if the developer goes bankrupt, then we don't have any claim to what happens with the last 2 lots. So we could get stuck with only the amount of money that we get up front.
Let me think about that. That's true. There is an attachment that Brian and I have seen by a third party for some commercial debt, an attachment for 284 against 5 points. We would want some assurance of equity in those lots exceeding that attachment and enough to fund the rest of it. But yeah, bear in mind, you're talking about only 43 at most, the difference between 65 and 108. And if the 108 comes down more over the next week, then it's not a lot of money. We don't know what other debts, liabilities the developer has out there. And you're right in theory, but I'm not sure we can do any better than that.
Okay.
Is this typical that there is not an ability to fund the tri-party agreement at the time of the execution of the tri-party agreement?
No, because in my experience, a tripartite agreement usually gets signed up front. The way Brian's model agreement that he had in the files was drafted years ago, and the way that the regs read, it would be done up front, and therefore all the loan proceeds, all the construction loan proceeds would be undispersed, and therefore they could be held back by the bank. You're in a position where almost all the loan proceeds have been dispersed for construction of the subdivision. So this is not typical to me. On the other hand, the statute and the regs contemplate shifting from one form of security to another, and in fact, it's that the developer has that right. So it's probably not unprecedented, but it is a little bit of a square peg into a round hole to be doing a tripartite at this stage of the proceedings.
So are you saying that in response to Dieb's comment that you would then do an attachment on those last two lots as part of the agreement for the remainder?
No.
Okay.
No, just what I said was I'd want some representations about financial solvency, essentially. Representations that there's enough equity in those lots. And the developers, doesn't know of any, basically that it's financially solvent. Not getting an attachment on the lots is taking an interest in property that has to go to town meeting. So we can't go down that road.
Maureen, do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I'm unhappy about it, but no.
I'm very unhappy about it. I actually, after our meeting and after our vote, it wasn't until thereafter that the town was informed of this situation. And it is very uncomfortable, and it's not good. It's not the way that I typically would ever do a business transaction. And I wouldn't do it for myself, and it makes me uncomfortable to do it on behalf of the town as well.
Well, also, as we're going into, it looks like every nickel is going to count. Our budget's going to be shrinking. I just don't want to see the town on the hook for anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, because to be honest, I was just going to say, even if there's only, 20K or 30K shortfall and the town needs to do that, that's 30K that the town probably doesn't have. So I'm really, really uncomfortable with this setup.
Art, this is Beth. I can't recall in the latest version of the tri-party, how is the payment of the drainage reimbursement to the town for the Sawmill Brook work being handled?
Well, there was a provision in the draft that I sent you, but then the select board took it up last night, and so I've taken it out of the tripartite. The select board approved last night a reimbursement schedule based on the sale of each lot. And so that's just being handled under an amendment to the development agreement with that board.
It's going a lot by lot basis, Art?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So would it make more sense to, instead of releasing all 5 lots, release 3 of them at this point with the intention that $65,000 would go into escrow? Is that the other option, to give the town to that opportunity between that and or take the 108 and divide it by 5?
Well, yes, you could release 3 lots tonight and get $65,000 in funding for the escrow, and then at some future date, which you hope is soon, but who knows, release the other 2 lots for the funding of the remainder of the escrow.
Or the work gets done. Right, that's the other option.
Yeah, right.
It's done.
Well, look, the time element is the key to all of this. We've been trying to do this quickly because of the closings that 5 Points has, which were extended from March 31 by 2 weeks. The more time that goes by, the more work they're doing, and the more work Beth has a chance reasonably. And I will say engineering has been tremendously responsive throughout this. But the more chance Beth would have to have somebody out there and inspect and reduce the number. So the 108, 2 weeks from now, the 108 could come down a bunch more. But we're also trying to again, live with the schedule with the buyers so that these lots can get sold and we can move on.
And it's for 3 lots at this time, that the transaction?
He's got one buyer for 3 and one for 2. The 3 was scheduled first, but they're not necessarily going to go in that order. So if you release 3 lots, you would, I'm not sure, well, maybe we'd be able to nail this down with Kurt James before we sign the tripartite. I'm not sure which 3 it would apply to, but if you're releasing 3 lots, then you get to have the $65,000 held by Rockland Trust in escrow.
After the sale, not at the time of the execution of the tripartite. It's after the sale of those 3 lots.
Correct. The tripartite would say that the releases take effect at the closing. Everything will happen simultaneously. Release, sale, and funding of the escrow. The way people get paid out of a closing, off the settlement statement in any real estate deal.
Mm-hmm.
Money has to go various directions at any closing. So as part of the closing, as part of the release of the lots and their sale, the 65 would get funded. It's not. I'm not. I have to think about the bankruptcy aspect. It's functionally, leaving bankruptcy aside, it's functionally the same as releasing all 5 now, but I hold 2 of them in escrow for the second sale. And those releases wouldn't take effect until the second sale. If you want to be able to make, if you want it to come back to you for a release of the 4th and 5th lots and not have it be all done tonight, that's fine. As I said, I think functionally it's the same. The releases would not take effect any sooner if you vote on them all tonight. The bankruptcy issue, if you vote the releases, subject to that condition, does that become an asset of the estate? I don't know. I suppose it's possible that you have a little more bankruptcy exposure. I am not a bankruptcy lawyer, and I'm not entirely sure, but that's plausible. So
yeah, to be honest,
that would be a reason just to release 3 of them tonight.
Well, the problem I see, I understand what you're saying, is that if we release 3, so we're not going to identify which lots we're going to release. We'll just say any 3 lots are released as long as they are sold. So he could sell 2 of the lots, and then he'd have to come back to us to get, since you said he had 2 buyers, 1 for 3 and 1 for 2, he'd have to come back to us to get the other 2 released?
Yes. If you only released 3 tonight, he'd have to come back to get the other 2 released.
Okay.
Just note that the bank has agreed to fund $65,000 whether 2 are sold or 3. It's not.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So even if the 2 go first, you get your $65,000, and then you're ahead of the game.
Well, yeah. So I guess I'm going along with Heather's. I don't know if it was a suggestion, Heather, or just a question about releasing releasing 3 lots. So at least we get $65K up front. We don't release the other 2 until at least for several weeks. Maybe by then he will have decreased the amount of money he needed in escrow. Just to move this forward. I'm really unhappy about this, and maybe it just shows that next time we do this, we get it all up front before the development starts.
It's
I
their
agree
choice.
with Diab,
Yeah.
and I am going to be leaving the meeting soon.
Well, that will, then if that's the case, if there are going to be any votes, let's try to get those done. If there are going to be votes, if there are not going to be votes, let's make that decision as well.
Oh, I'm ready to vote. Can you put your motion back up that you had?
So the one from Arch. Yep, hold on. This was all 5 on 108, but now we're debating the 3 related to the 65.
No, it would just be, we leave the 65 for the tripartite. So the motion would say,
gotcha.
To release 3 of the 5 lots shown on the subdivision plan. The tripartite stays 108.
But before the board votes this new vote, do they need to rescind the vote from the last meeting, which released all 5 for $200,000?
Yeah, rescind that or supersede it. Yeah, I should make it. I guess you'd make it explicit. Move to. Yeah, you can say rescind the vote taken on March 24, and then keep going.
Okay. Do you want me to?
Or it's really. I mean, you're modifying that vote. I don't like. I don't
why don't we
like
just wait until the language is set, Maureen, and then.
How about that? Modify the vote.
Because Brian's already issued the certificate of vote to the applicant that discusses the release of all 5 lots with the $200,000 tri-party agreement. So we need something to document that those 5 lots are no longer released and that we're changing that.
Well, I think the legal term is modifying.
It says modify the vote taken and grant 3 of the 5 for
So
108.
Modify.
Well, you can
technically,
say rescind. So, Beth, I'm not that worried about that because even that other vote was contingent on the signing of a tripartite. But fine, you can rescind that. I mean, the applicant understands that this is a substitution.
So we're moving to rescind, Brian, the vote
Yep.
of March 24th.
And then I would say you're granting. Granting in part. Hang on a second. Hang on, Brian.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say and partially granting 5 points request. The only request you have on file is to release all 5.
Correct. We do not have a request for 3.
However, could we not include in this vote then release? So when, so it's all taking the transaction for the 2 or 3, whatever they do, is all one, where the tri-party agreement is signed, the financial components is done, and then the sale of the lots. It's all one transaction. Can we not do that for the other 2 or the other 2 lots as well to get the remainder of the money? Just do it, not do it as one agreement, do it as 2 separate transactions. That then subsequently the release of 2 of the remaining of the 5 lots would then be released upon the tri-party in the amount of X. And that transaction for the release of those 2 lots would then be at the same exact time that the remaining of the money comes in.
I didn't understand the first part of your question. The tripartite gets signed, then there's 2 real estate closings, we hope, each of which results in some funding to the escrow account.
Yeah.
Nothing else happens at the time the tripartite is signed.
Yeah, so the release, so we're saying we're only going to release 3 of the 5. What I'm saying is do 3 of the 5 with the first amount, and then the remainder of the 2 in the amount of the other amount. Maybe I'm making it more complicated, and we just come back to it again another time. For the
I thought you didn't want all 5 tonight.
Well, the other 5 are contingent. The other 2 are contingent on the remainder of the money coming in and being tied to the release of those lots. I don't want to release all 5 and then say, okay, well, we'll give you 65 now and then give you this later. I want to release 3, they give us 65. We release 2, they give us the remainder right then. Not we release all 5 and then we sit and wait around for the money to come due to transactions that are completely out of our control. So I would like to say that we release 3 of the lots and that financial comes in. However they get that financial money is none of our business, but that money comes in at that time. The other 2 are released and that money comes in at that time when they're released. I don't want to be any part of whatever transactions going on the outside. That's where I'm at. When they release 3, 65,000 should come in. When we release 2, the remainder should come in at the same time that when the release of those lots are. Whenever, if it's when we release at the same time that they're doing their sale, so the money comes right to us right at that time, that's fine. whatever's going on, how they're funding it, that's when we release the lots. When there, we know we're confident in the money that is there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the 65 should get funded before the real estate closing, I think, because that's coming. Well, no, that's not true. The bank is dispersing some funds from the loan, some loan proceeds, and cutting its draw from the sale of the first 3 lots, cutting its take a little bit. So the whole 65 gets funded simultaneous with the sale of the first 3 lots. The rest of it gets funded simultaneous with the sale, the closing of the other 2 lots. Okay, you're getting one chunk of money at each closing.
Yeah, well, yes.
Yeah, so we release 3 today, and then we don't have to do anything until they come back and ask for the other 2.
That's correct, except Diab, you and Heather will be involved in the tripartite agreement.
Yes, understood. But I mean, the board doesn't have to. Understood.
Yep.
And to clarify, it's not, if they're going to release 1 and then reduce that 65. The expectation is if they release 1, 2, or 3, it's 65,000 at this point. We're not going to go in circles again and say, okay, well now we're just going to release 1, so we're only going to give you, 1/5 of the 108 at this point. That is going to cause a reconvene of the planning board to come back again, like we just did now, to go back through it again. So the expectation is 1, 2, or 3 lots, 65,000.
I asked specifically today, what happens if the 2 lots get sold first and not the 3? Is the bank funding only 2/3 of the 65? And the answer was crystal clear. No, the bank has agreed to fund 65. Now, I didn't ask what happens if only 1 lot gets sold, but I'm content that the tripartite agreement will say this, it's 65 on the sale of any of the 3 released lots.
Yep. I just want to be very crystal clear on where if we go forward with the vote, and this is my expectation of what this vote means. So it is very clear going forward and as we proceed. Okay.
Look, if his buyers walk and he ends up selling them 1 at a time, he may come back to you and say, I can't do this. And we need another vote with a different tripartite, and we'll be looking at a different amount of uncompleted work.
Yep.
And the deal gets restructured. But
keep in mind, this is Craig. Keep in mind, I'm working hard to get all the items done. So the expectation is that the number will continue to drop over the next several weeks.
Just so it's really clear, as we talked earlier in this meeting, we are meeting again on the 14th, but we are not meeting again until March 12th.
April 12th? May 12th.
May 12th. I'm sorry. So I want to make very clear that's a long gap between our next meeting and the following meeting. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that. And right now there isn't much flexibility that the engineering department has to keep going doing inspections on a regular basis. If there's something that needs to be done, there's not going to be much movement on that dollar amount because of the inspections and the schedules and stuff.
No, that's actually not true, because when I complete an item, the list goes down. So there's
expected to come off the list, and that means it requires staffing to do that. And depending on what's going on,
I understand.
Do it at the schedule you would prefer.
Yeah, I understand that fully. I understand that fully, but there's a process for this. There's a schedule. There's even a formula. So this is really simple. Half the items on the list have already been completed. I've only got a few more left, and we're in the home stretch here. So this is not going to get complicated or worse. It gets easier as we go.
Right. But I want to be clear, Craig, that we're not going out there every day and looking at the few items you've done that day. There needs to be a process There needs to be a process going forward. There's a formal form for request of a release of security, and that form needs to be filed. That filing needs to be made with the board, and a memo needs to be provided with the list of items from the punch list that you've completed since that time. And then after that, we will go out and perform the inspection.
No problem.
I'm going to make a motion because I'm going to be leaving the meeting in a sec. So I'm going to move to rescind the vote taken on March 24th, 2020, related to the release of lots and partially grant, not granting, and partially grant 5 points request to release 3 of the 5 lots shown on the Abbey Road definitive subdivision plan, contingent on the full execution of a tripartite agreement in the amount of $108,000 and on the satisfaction of all of the terms and conditions stated in that agreement. Further, to delegate Heather Von Meering and Diab Jurius the authority to approve and assign the tripartite agreement on behalf of the board.
Any discussion? Diab?
So I have a question. This is Beth. Doesn't the vote have to specifically call out which of the 3 lots are being released?
I'll let you figure that out. I don't. I've got to go.
That's how we've always done any votes like this in the past.
Well, Beth, I addressed that a few minutes ago. We don't know which. That is, Kurt James tells me that Craig doesn't know which 3 for sure. Craig, if you were pretty sure which ones, then we could take a chance and name those lots. Otherwise, Beth, I think this is okay. It's not ideal, but I think it's okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We've got 2 buyers and they're all under P&S agreements, and the sequencing and the schedule is not set in stone. So
I'm going to leave. Does somebody want to call the vote?
I will second the motion.
All those in favor, roll call vote, please.
It's Maureen, aye.
Diab, aye.
Heather Von Meering, aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. Heather and board members, thank you very much. Beth and Brian as well.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
We'll
for all
be
your
in touch,
time on
Art.
this.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Okay. I know Maureen is leaving, but Deb, I would like to take the time to talk to you and about our budget.
Yes. Do we have to close the meeting since?
Yeah, I'm going to.
Do we have to?
I just want to make sure we have some sense that we're going to be seeing minutes, and I appreciate Diab's willingness to write them for this one. We had minutes prepared by Brian. We didn't get to vote. Could they be on the first thing of the agenda for next week? And we have to figure out what's going on with the recording secretary.
We got applications in for that position.
Great. Good.
So we're waiting for that to close and go forward with the hiring and interview.
Right now, there's 5 applications in for a recording secretary as of this morning or this afternoon.
Very
the agenda, yeah, we'll definitely get the meeting minutes on the agenda first next time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As far as anything else, if Maureen is leaving, it's unclear if we can. Certainly can't make any votes past that. I just didn't know what you.
No.
Yeah.
No votes. Well, we can close the meeting, but we can continue proceeding with talking about the budget.
Yes.
And leave it open if people want to hear us talk about it.
Okay.
Well, can you please, maybe when Diab takes minutes, note that the meeting's closed, and anything you want to add that's a point of information, I would be interested in anything discussed.
Sure.
I leave. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
We need do you want to move for?
Move to
Maureen?
Has Maureen left the building?
No, I'm about to click.
No, make your motion, please.
Make your motion.
Oh, so move to adjourn the meeting. 8:50.
Okay, second.
10:15.
All those in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Maureen.
Okay, let's talk about the budget real quick, Diab. So Brian had a meeting with our representatives who were assigned to the planning board budget, and there seems to be some misunderstanding on what was included in the override and what was not in regards to economic development position.
Okay.
And with that, Brian and I also had a follow-up phone conference with Lisa to discuss all of the positions she has and where does the economic development housing production plan position fall into the needs of the town. Was it in the forecasting? It was in the forecasting for the override, and how we go about it going forward. She said it's on the higher end of her priorities of asks, and